But in any case, we will be beginning our webinar. Thanks everybody for joining today. The topic is the importance of mental health in STEM, and I'm pleased to announce that our speaker today is Jessica Harris, who runs her own LLC, and I'll let her take it away. And please use the Q&A if you have any questions.
Yes, good afternoon, morning, depending on where part of the country you are in. My name is Jessica Harris, aka Auntie Jess. I'm an astrophysicist by training. I've been in education and public outreach, diversity, equity, inclusion, and mentoring for over 15 years this year, which is really exciting. So today we're going to be talking about the importance of mental health in STEM. As I mentioned, I've been in education for a while, public outreach and education. So there's an educator in me, so this will be a little bit engaging. So if you have questions, please let me know. Um, I'm not sure. Are they able to tap or write things in the chat or no?
I don't believe so, but you can use the Q&A.
Okay. Okay. So I'm gonna put some stuff in the Q&A and then I'll just change. So every time I do a presentation, I know that we're virtual. I always like to invoke my Auntie Jess bubble. This is just creating a safe and brave space for us to ask questions, for you to be present. We learn through growing. So there may be things that we want to talk or discuss. And so we want to be available for that. So as much as possible, I know you've joined this, you've taken your time off to be here. So as much as possible, be present, embrace feeling uncomfortable if there are things that come up, sharing the air when you're asking questions, using I statements in your questions or statements. Again, intent versus impact. We may intend for something to be a certain way, but the impact may be different. So we just want to be conscious of that. We want to use the both and rule, right? If someone's sharing a story, we don't want to negate their story but by saying but, right? We want to say that is true and my story, or both are true, but this is also, I'm sorry, both are true and this is my experience. We want to do calling in versus calling out. This is a new topic for our space within STEM. And so there's a lot of learning, there's a lot of information or misinformation that we may have about mental health. And so we want to make sure that we're calling in individuals and we're not calling out. I know it's me presenting, and so I will call you in versus calling you out. The Vegas rule, we want to be able to, the stories that are shared or questions that may be personal, we want to keep those here, but I want you to take what you've learned away from here. So share that out to others, share that on your social media, so we can get this information out there. And then I can't see you, but I always like to let people know, please use the space as you need to, which is really important. And just if you can, set an intention. Like you saw this advertisement for some reason, there's something that you wanted to get out of this. Just take a few seconds and I'll just pause for you to just take a few seconds of what you intend or your intentions for this session. Okay. All right. So this is, I was hoping to have the chat function, but we have the Q&A. So if you can in the Q&A, answer these questions. So it'll be just typing in a 1 or typing in a 2. But how confident, or are you confident in recognizing signs of mental health challenges? If that's true, put 1 into the Q&A. And the other is, are you confident in recognizing signs of substance use challenges? If that is true for you, put it 2. And again, my computer is freezing up, so I cannot see the Q&A. Alexis, if you can help me.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. Nothing's been answered yet. So yeah, we have some answers now.
Okay.
Cool.
Okay. See it. I see it now. Awesome.
A lot of ones.
Ones for the 1, 2 for the 2. That's good. I'm glad we have confidence in here. And I'm going to assume if you didn't respond, because this is a biased question in the favor of being confident, I'll assume that maybe the rest of the half are maybe not as confident, right? And this is okay. Often we're going into situations of mental health challenges, substance use challenges, and we're not sure what to do, right? So I want to share a little bit of information today. I want to encourage you, that we're going to move a little. I'm going to show data because some of us are here are scientists or maybe in different backgrounds. And so we love to have data and information, right? So that's our logical brain. But I also want to get down into our hearts and understand the importance of supports for mental health challenges and substance use challenges within our STEM field now. And I'll share with you my theory of change. So, the data, right? So, when it comes to mental health within students, um, 1/3 of the graduate population experience severe mental health challenges. So, as I'm going through these data points, I want you to think about the experiences that I'm focusing this on students because I mentor a lot of undergraduate students, but I also want you to think about your colleagues. I also want you to think about yourself and how this plays if you're having mental health challenges or you're having substance use challenges, how this impacts your day to day. So think about this as um, just layers that people may be experiencing that are invisible, we may not know about. Other challenges that students are having are difficult with relationships with their advisors. They're having financial insecurity. And I found the statistics just horrifying that suicide is the second leading cause of death among college students. So when we talk about the importance of mental health, we have to be reminded that it is happening regardless if we're seeing it or not, right? If it's directly impacting us or not directly impacting us. But for some, we have experienced this or we know others that have experienced this. So I will be talking a lot about the specific supports and information around mental health first aid with the National Council for Mental Health and Wellness. I'm trained as a mental health first aid instructor. I teach others to be mental health first aiders. This is a way to learn how to recognize early signs and symptoms of mental health challenges, how to recognize worsening signs of mental health challenges and substance use challenges, and worsening when someone's actually in crisis. What are those signs and symptoms that someone may be displaying? And so I'll get to that in a little bit later, but from their framework and from their training. And if you want more information about that, especially if you're in higher ed or in academia and you do want to bring this program to your university or you want to bring this to your organizations, I have a flyer that I'm happy to share with you after this. So 88% of college students report that college life is stressful, right? A lot of us can attest to college life being stressful. 60% of college students met the criteria for at least one mental health challenge, and half of college students followed from freshman to junior year met criteria to at least one substance use challenge. Again, being reminded as we're talking about the importance of mental health within STEM that this is happening. Okay, so this data point, right, is not specifically just to students because some of us on here, again, are professionals ourselves. We may be representing our schools, we may be representing an organization that are here. I'm not sure all the people that are here and why you're here, but just wanted to give broad statistics about our US population. So this is of 2020. So of the US population that identifies as Black, 16% of that have reported mental health illness in the last year. So that's over 7 million people. So this is bigger than the populations of Chicago, Houston, and Philadelphia combined, right? And what I learned about in this course is that those that are diagnosed with anxiety, for example, it can take them up to 10 years for them to get treatment, right? So for other mental health disorders, people may be diagnosed with these things, but then it may take lots of years for them to get experience or for them to get treatment for this. Okay, so some more data. What I want to say about this is that the effects of mental health challenges is really high in African American persons, and the when you talk to college administration about the biggest issues that their students are having, mental health issues are a top priority, right? So again, this is happening. So I believe in being the change that I want to see. And so I've put out into the world maybe a year or 2 years ago a theory of change about use the how we can use how we can make an impact, right, on mental health within our field. So there's two frameworks that I'm bringing into this. So I want to talk about external factors. So again, added layers of what people may be experiencing that contribute to mental health challenges, may contribute to substance use challenges. So one of those, right, we have to take into full context of individuals and what they're experiencing. I believe in a holistic approach. It's very hard for me to be present, for example, doing research when I'm experiencing mental health challenges, when I'm experiencing microaggressions. And I'll go through some other factors, but just keeping this in mind that there are lived experiences that people are experiencing that impact the science that we're doing. So this article I really love. If anyone talks to me about microaggressions, especially in science, want to point them to this article because I love how they defined um, microaggressions. I love how they've broken it down into three different types. And so there's micro assault, there's micro insult, and then there's micro invalidation. When I first came across this, I really resonated with the micro invalidation. I knew I was experiencing microaggressions, and anyone that's experienced microaggressions for extended period of time, they will tell you it feels like death by a thousand cuts. And the ones that the type of what I was experiencing was microaggression, micro invalidations, where I was saying something that was happening. I was sharing an experience, but then it was being invalidated. Oh, well, no one else is experiencing that. I wonder why. I'm the only Black woman in this organization. I'm the only Black woman in this group. So yeah, maybe the reason I'm only experiencing this is because of that potentially, or I'm the only woman, you know. So I can share this later in the chat. I also want to share just the breakdown again. Um, I care about all of us, right? But also, all of us are also having different unique experiences. And so I focus a lot on BIPOC experiences that are happening. Just an FYI, not to negate anyone else's experiences, but I just wanted to share that there is a more increased impact that is happening to Black, to Hispanics, to Asians, right? So this breakdown here of microaggressions by group, you see that Black adults are experiencing it more often than their white counterparts. Another factor when it comes to just stress in our mental health is racial battle fatigue. So this was a term coined in 2008 by a critical race theorist, William Smith. And this is the impact on race related stress that impacts our mental and emotional condition. So, this is happening on a regular basis for us. So I think about this in my framework. These are external factors, right? We want to change these things, we're working on them at a very top level, but I treat them as a fixed factor. They're not going to change on really quick time periods. They're on long time periods. So I mentioned some of them, but systematic racism, sexism, racism, microaggressions, all the types that I mentioned. I didn't mention, but emotional labor that we are often experiencing, toxic environments within our STEM field, economic and social structures, and limited funding, right? Especially with all that's happening now. So these are external factors, some things that we just do not have control of, and I treat that as a fixed factor. Now, going into, so I want to acknowledge that. So when we're talking about mental health and why this is so important on our field, we need to acknowledge that there's an experience that some of us are having that others are not. Right, the data is there. Again, I'm an astrophysicist by training. I love data. Sometimes we get so stuck in the data that we forget that there's actually humans that are experiencing this. And so what I focus on in my framework to be the answer to the problem is the external forces. This is something that we can change, we have more control over. And I'm defining this as the ability to change immediate factors in one's control. So we can change one's self-esteem, we can change one's self-awareness, confidence, and control of one's emotions and thoughts. And I just wanted to frame this just for a second. This is more than just I feel good about myself. This is more than just words of affirmation. Yes, it's a part of it, but when I talk about encouraging, when I talk about mental health, well-being within STEM, I'm talking about us holistically. How do we increase our self-awareness? How do we increase our self-esteem when all of these external factors are telling us that we're not good enough, right? So imposter syndrome, I could do a whole other talk about that, right? Imposter syndrome is higher in women. It's higher in African Americans. Why is that? It's because of what we're being told verbally, what we're told non-verbally, what we're told when we're showing up into spaces, and how this impacts our self-esteem. right? So we can't talk about self-esteem when we're not talking about these overall issues. So dealing with racial trauma, as I mentioned before, just some things that we can think of. I always love to include within my talks, what we can do practically right now, besides the training, which I'll get into just a little bit. So when we feel disconnected or triggered, we're into our fight, flight, freeze response that's happening to us. Sometimes that's in a conversation, sometimes it's in a meeting. I know I've been in this many a times, and you just need to get away from that. And so one line I love to use is, can we pick this up later? You may never have to pick it up later, but saying, can we pick this up later? There's a lot of energy in these types of exchanges. And so doing something physical, it could be a brisk walk, it could be a run, some other physical activity that can help you, asking for help. And so again, I'm sharing with you the importance of mental health, part of mental health within STEM. Part of that is the supports. Again, mental health and systems and supports around them, of course, have been around for years, but we don't have as many systems or structures well known or need to be developed within our STEM fields. And so we have to tap into supports, and that's going to look different for everyone. That could be tapping into a local group. It could be tapping into your church. It could be tapping into some other form of group. It could be also therapy that you're tapping into. Connecting in your community. Something that can help our mental health is finding our people. And so I want you to know, if you're here, I'm part of your people, part of your group. Want to encourage you. Love to, if you'd love to reach out to me, I could put my or share with you my contact information. But finding your community that looks like you, or affinity groups that have shared interests as you, can really be helpful. Another that I always encourage students or professionals also is engaging in social justice causes. There may, again, those external factors, they may feel like they're never ever going to change. And so, something that helped me when I felt I was part of organizations, when I felt I was part of programs that they just weren't shifting enough, the culture wasn't shifting enough, or people didn't want to hear my perspective, I had to turn that energy into something else. And so I ended up serving in our local Human Rights Commission in Charlottesville. And that was a great outlet where I can use my knowledge to impact our city. Um, the other is just participating in relaxing activities. All of us may find our different things: yoga, meditation, outlets, aromatherapy, nature. I actually love doing forest bathing. I just recently moved into Mississippi, so I have to find some new places to do that. But finding your thing that feels relaxing, and then breathing exercises and allowing your feelings. Again, acknowledging, as we're in with our STEM field, there's a lot of factors, there's a lot of things that are happening. When I was talking to you about micro invalidations, that's a lot of people not acknowledging how something made me feel. As I mentioned before, the rules, right? Intern versus impact. Often I'm sharing to people, like, there was a negative impact of what you said. I felt dismissive in what I was sharing. Like, I was a part of I just want to share this. I was a part of um a talk, and I was sharing my point of view about how I really care about BIPOC individuals because we're having unique experiences. And someone just invalidated by saying, well, she cares about everyone. As I mentioned, yes, I do care about everyone, but I also have a specific focus, right? So don't negate like what I'm trying to say. So I just want to pause. Are there any questions before I move on? And you can put it in the Q&A.
It looks like it's pretty quiet, but thanks. This has been very engaging. I'm listening, so.
Okay. That's hard with webinars. You don't see. Okay. So as I mentioned before briefly, that I am a mentor, and part of being a mentor is that I hear a lot of stories from students that maybe their academic advisors, their own mentors, are not hearing, and I don't ever take that for granted. I was coined by one of my mentees, Auntie Jess, but I take that role very seriously as an elder, but I'm still learning. I don't have all of the information, but I take it not lightly when people share with me their stories. So as I was mentioning to you, the importance of mental health, right? It's happening, right? It's happening in certain demographics more than it's happening in other demographics. Um, and I shared with you the data, but I don't know how enough to express to people that that data that I was sharing, these statistics that I just shared, like these are people's real lives. Like these are some of the most intense sometimes conversations that I'm having with my mentees about just feeling a sense of belonging, being a space where they can share what they're experiencing without being afraid that I'm judging them, without being afraid of a microaggression, and sometimes acknowledging to them, like, yes, that was a microaggression that you were experiencing. Yes, actually, what you're talking about is racial battle fatigue. And so I get to be people's story keepers. Um, and I share this to say, as I mentioned earlier, we have to get out of our heads into our hearts. And part of that is knowing that this data is more than just data, it's individuals. And also to think about, as I mentioned, this is happening. Whether or not we're knowing it, when someone's experiencing often a mental health challenge, we often call it invisible because you can't see it. I love there's graphics. There's so many different graphics of this, but it'll show this is what someone looks like with depression, and they're smiling and they're playing soccer and they're doing different things because it looks invisible. You can't tell by looking at someone that they're depressed. Some people could be high functioning in their depression, right? It's not always looking like Eeyore, right? Really sad. Their clothes are distraught. Yes, that could be a sign that something's happening. But again, so I just wanted to share like that I can't express enough of the stories that are being shared with me. And so when I talk about getting out of your head into your heart is because when we're not doing something, especially about mental health, when we're not putting supports into place, knowing that certain students, knowing that students are experiencing stress at different levels, right? Knowing that our African American students are experiencing racial battle fatigue, knowing that college students, half of college students, reason the part of the statistics for about suicide are in college students. Like this is a lot that's happening. And so we want to be able to provide some supports for that. So within this, I have a mental health call actions. I mentioned to you about the adult mental health first aid. As I mentioned, I am a trainer. I am offering a course in March in a few weeks. If you want to be a part of this, I highly recommend this. I recommend this if you're in higher ed. So this is for anyone 18 or over. Listen, if you are, this is good for you as an individual in your community. This is good for you in your workplace. This is good for you if you are, I highly recommend it if you are leading student groups that you should take this training. So if you're interested in this, please let me know. And I can also, oh, I can't text them the text, but if you scan the QR code, it'll pop up the registration. So this is a little bit from the flyer that I had. If you're not able to do this course in March, you can sign up for my waiting list and I will send you information about future mental health first aid trainings. I'm going to do them once a month. Um, so this is just my Auntie Jess pledge. When I think about how to support within our field, how to support mental health, we want to make sure that we're not continuing to do any more harm. We want to commit to anti-racism. We want to commit to being true allies. We want to commit to the hard work of self-reflection. Again, as I mentioned earlier, as I was setting the rules and setting the tone, like there's sometimes we have to be introspective about what we're doing and commit to making our STEM field a better place. We want to commit to believing in our STEM family when they're expressing their experiences. Um, I wanted to share some resource guides. Again, I love the educator in me loves to teach and share information, but also provide resources. So the Gratitude app, it is free. I've been using this since the beginning of the pandemic, actually. It was a way for me to have my own outlet and care about my own mental health. And so I started doing 3 things I was grateful for every day. And I have over 1,000 entries. I've been doing this for several years now. So find like your thing and find find your outlet. So I'll pause and if there's any questions.
So while we wait for people to ask some questions, that was a lot of really great. Oh, there we go. Perfect. Can you share additional resources we can point our students to if we recognize they're having a mental health crisis?
Yes. My favorite is 988. 988 is a great resource. It's a, crisis hotline, a suicide hotline. But I always want to encourage to people, you don't have to necessarily be in a crisis. You don't have to be having suicidal thoughts, but it's a great place where you just don't know what to do, right? Like you may be in that situation yourself. I know I've used it on a friend's behalf, even though I'm a mental health instructor. Like she was showing all the signs of she's in crisis, but she's in a whole other state and I wasn't sure what to do. So 988, save that in your phone. It's like my go-to place. You can call the number, you can text the number. They have a website that you can search 988, it will pop up. This is within the United States. Just wanted to share if someone's watching this internationally. But it's a great resource. Yeah, it's a great resource. And so even in the situation where I had to call on behalf of a friend, of course, they made sure like I was good, but they provided me some really good resources and they will connect you. What's great about that is because they are a national program, they can connect you with local, right? So that's the information I didn't have. They were in Minnesota. I wasn't sure the resources in Minnesota. So I would say pointing students to 988. And if you're and just to local counseling, there's a lot of, I was going to say, if you're on a college campus, um, pointing them to the counseling center there. But if you're in like high school or something else, pointing them to local, there's a lot of sometimes nonprofits that are supporting mental health or mobile units or different things like that. You don't have to call like the police to get support.
Yeah, those are a lot of really great resources. And I know where I live, there's some local organizations that are specifically focused on different populations. What was I gonna ask? No, I had a question. I forgot.
And the other is national, no, health, Mental Health America. They're a great website that has lots of information. They have like a list of like if you're LGBTQ and you're wanting a specific someone to reach out with that in that specific group, there's information there. So yeah. What was your question? I was kind of giving you time to.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I was thinking just generally, because you're right, mental health matters are kind of, we know they exist in STEM and in physics and astronomy, but I think they are still kind of taboo.
Yeah,
What can we do to normalize? I don't that people are going through things for a lot of reasons, so that people don't feel so ashamed and isolated. 'Cause I know that some folks don't want to seek out help because there's still a stigma, unfortunately.
absolutely. That's a great question. I know I'm very biased. I'm going to keep mentioning the mental health first aid. It's not just because I'm insured. Look, I don't get paid to say this to you, but one of the ways that we can destigmatize this is literally what the course is about, is bringing language and having people in place. This is why that's part of my framework for my mental health action plan. It's just putting more people in place. Like we need to have more of these type of conversations openly. We need to have them at my vision, if I could cast my vision, I'd love to have this at every scientific conference that we're hosting to begin to talk about it because the more we're not, right? There's again, I've heard students say to me, I don't want to tell my professor, whoever it is, that I'm experiencing severe depression because they're going to think negatively from an academic point of view. But there's so many supports that you can have that can help you, but it is scary to be able to share that. Like I'm also a person, I don't mind sharing it because I think part of bringing the stigma is just talking about it. I'm a person who lives with mental health challenges. I have depression, I have anxiety. I know what that's like. This is why I care so much about my students. I know what it's like to live in STEM and be dealing with all of that. So I think part of your answer is just getting more people trained first and foremost in mental health first aid, and then just having discussions. I believe we should have more private, like I know it's a lot to maybe have it in a big plenary. I'm not talking about plenary kind of spaces, but having them in your more smaller spaces where people can get comfortable talking about this and sharing information. There really is power in community. Like when I'm sharing this with students and I say, hey, like I'm dealing with this, or they share that they're dealing with it, I'm saying like, yes, like Auntie Jess also deals with anxiety. Yes, I also deal with depression. These are the things that I've done. Then it makes you feel less alone.
Yes, thanks for that, because I think that's true, and I appreciate your forthcomingness with this because I know a lot of folks when they get more senior in their careers, they're and I understand why too. They're increasingly more private about these things. So I think especially when I think about faculty and peer-to-peer faculty, it becomes a little bit there's a different type of challenge with that kind of sharing. Is there any thoughts about what we can do about that as a community?
Yeah. I thought about that too. It actually has taken me many years to publicly share about anxiety because it's like, oh, people are not going to work with me. People are not like, I don't know. I was really worried about it. Again, I think we should start somewhere. I think part of it is centering this as part of your workplace norms, right? I know organizations that are literally training all of their senior people to be mental health first aiders so that it's trickling down from the top. I say this all the time, and anytime that I'm consulting, change is not going to happen. I know I'm preaching to the choir, but change is not going to happen unless we're having it from the top down. Yes, those grassroots are important, but really it's going to have to come from the top down. But I think bringing more outside people, right? I know I also may be speaking to the choir. This is not novel information. I think just bringing in the experts that have this information. We're experts on the science. We know what we're talking about, but we're not experts on the social. We're not experts on the mental, but bringing in those outside people. And again, I believe creating those smaller shared spaces and creating the culture to change. Part of the culture changing so that it's okay. It's okay to take PTO for a mental health day. Like, let's normalize that. This is why we have PTO, to have those kind of things and not having to over explain that to individuals. Or if you do have to take FMLA, not feeling like that's a negative thing. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's just some of the good practices too. That sometimes people get stressed, maybe it's not a diagnosed mental health thing, but maybe they're just stressed and tired, and that's fine that they need to take a break. They don't actually have to be sick with like the flu or a cold and take that time off. They can be just tired, and that's cool. It's
Yeah.
fine for them to do that. Yeah, that makes sense to me. I'm trying to think some other things that might anyone else can ask questions in the Q&A because I think there's just so much stuff that's going on with different challenges in I think specifically about departments, but in different communities. Do you have any tips? Because you talked a little again about students, and sometimes I think about the faculty things is how tips and advice on how to approach your colleagues or y- as appropriate, maybe somebody who's a little more senior to you, who's like in faculty positions, that they look like they're having challenges too around mental health. Because I think that's real sticky sometimes.
That's a really good question. So again, I'm going to point to the mental health first aid. What I love about this training is that we do learn like how to have these conversations. How do you talk to someone? How do you approach someone who is having a panic attack? What are the things to say? What do you do when someone's experiencing, you notice signs of depression? Like how do you have that? But if you're not going to take the training, which I highly recommend people to take this training, I think first thing that we learn about being mental health first aiders is one, getting comfortable having those conversations, but two, actually the relief it feels when you actually approach someone and say like, "Hey, Alexis, like I notice something different with you. Like you're not as present when we're in our meetings. Like how are you doing?" Like that's actually what we're trained to do in this course. And so there is that power dynamic. I am not naive about that. I've had to manage that on my own. But I think, again, reminding ourselves that people are also humans and just checking in and saying, like, I'm noticing, those are some powerful words we can use. Hey, I'm noticing a change in your behavior. Hey, like you've been canceling our meetings more than normal. Like, is something going on? And often people feel relieved to actually share. So I think that's one way to do it. And if you don't feel comfortable, because often, sometimes a lot of advice that I'm giving to my mentees and to professionals as I'm encouraging them, sometimes it may not feel good to do it, but sometimes kind of going around and going to someone maybe more senior or at their level to say, like, hey, I think something's going on with Brad. I'm not sure what it is, but I'm noticing X, Y, and Z. Do you mind talking to them? That way it kind of buffers you from being in the direct line of attack, potentially.
Yeah, that makes sense. And while you're talking about this mental health first aid training, I really like the phrasing about first aid because we think about first aid as, you have a cut or something on your,
Yes.
and you need to take care of immediately, but you also might not be the right person to, if it's like a cut that actually is infected and things like that, you
Yes.
have to go to somebody else for that. But the immediate aftermath is you can do something.
Yeah, that's what I love about the course is that it really just empowers you that you can do something. And they encourage us all the time about this course is like, you're not the expert. We don't become mental health like professionals. Like that is not what this course is about. It's exactly what you said. You become a resource, right? I don't know. Like my son recently broke his arm, right? And I felt so bad because it was like a day and a half where I really just thought it was like a really bad sprain, but he had to get x-ray and I noticed that he was, right? And so that example's used throughout this course. Like we know what to do. Like I knew he needed to get to the doctor to get an x-ray. Like I just no one ever had told me that, but I knew like that's what he needed. It's the same with mental health. It's the same with substance use. That's part of that normalizing this in our nature. Like yes, you should go see a professional. Here are some resources. That's something that's often really helpful. I know I've given you guys some resources, but part of that is being a part of this course. Part of this is just being a mental health advocate way before I even learned about this course. But one thing that you can do, if I could leave people with anything, is just getting resources up. And if you take away nothing from this, save 988 in your phone. Like you can remember that 988, saving that in your phone. That is a resource that will not fail you. It's not a end all be all type of thing. I can also provide y'all the number for substance use, but just having information is sometimes what's powerful. And we learn in this course how to know that identify that information. And again, locally is also something that I encourage people to check out. There are a lot of free programs, not so much in rural areas. Yes, we need to work on that, but there are often a lot of resources that we may not know about. Does that help answer your question? Are there any other questions? I don't
Sure.
know if it,
Question. I know sometimes folks have to rest a little and absorb a lot of information. We have a question. Have you seen the exciting examples from these ideas of mental health first aid being more formally structured into any STEM programs in higher education? Evidently, the University of Minnesota has a mental health advocates program or something. So I think just thinking about like, has a department taken on like X number of people gone through this mental health first aid training or maybe a student club or something like that? Could be.
yeah, so I don't know of any. This is why this though what I'm saying is not novel, it is novel in our field. This is kind of the what I was getting at. Like this is not something that people are doing. This is something I'm wanting to put more in a formal process. Like I believe everyone that's going into STEM should have a mental health, like have someone that they can go to, a therapist or someone, because what we're experiencing is so different than others, and specifically in physics and astronomy when you talk to other majors outside of physics and astronomy, like we're experiencing things that our chemists and our biologists are not experiencing. So I don't know of any. The only example that I do know of is an organization, as I mentioned, that's trained their executive leaders, and then they actually hired someone on that is trained as a mental health instructor. So there's someone embedded within their organizations that's teaching the rest of the members. But I am not aware specifically of any higher ed programs that are doing this, but I highly, highly encourage it. Oh, no. Okay, let me say one other place because they helped me get certified as a mental health first aid instructor. I wish I would appreciate them. Is the National Society of okay, so this number that I put into that you just shared is the substance abuse and mental health service administration. This is again, if you're knowing someone that is having some substance use challenge, again, their national wide program, calling them and saying like, hey, my friend is in Alaska. I'm not sure resources I can provide for them. I literally had to do it for a family member in Washington State. So um, the National Society of Black Physicists did spend time. I did train our executive board, and we have this. We did actually a workshop in 2023 at the conference talking about this. So I want to get this more out. So if you're, I don't know who asked that question. But if you wanting to partner, if you're interested, I just have to say like I haven't had as many in higher ed, but I have worked with organizations, but it's been more in like nurses or outside of kind of like the direct STEM that have done this.
Yeah, I'm thinking now about who I'm gonna pass your this info on for this, because I think it's really important. It's again not well addressed, basically. I'm thinking about the substance abuse aspect too. How there's been a lot of reports about substance abuse, specifically drinking, and how that can do all sorts of things in our environments. How do we, I guess, make environments where people aren't tempted to engage with substance abuse and things like that, and make things more inclusive? Because I think that's another whole conversation. Because I know that sometimes people don't understand that it's an issue for some people or a challenge, and that excludes them from certain spaces or stuff happens.
Absolutely. That's a great question because I remember when I was in graduate school, I wasn't a big drinker then. But a lot of the times our advisors were like asking us to kind of meet at in a not a, it wasn't a club, but like at a bar kind of situation that was centered around drinking. So one, we do have to change that culture. I would say like giving opportunity in spaces to have what is the word I'm trying to say? Like having the room be structured in a way that it's not centered around the drinks or giving mocktail kind of options, giving non-alcoholic type of options. I think it is something I've seen a lot in events, like, not to call any organization, I was about to say the organization, but anyways, there's a particular organization that's a huge conference that like they do have this, at their functions. And so I think just being conscious of that, again, it's part of the training. Like we don't know what we don't know, and understanding that some of us are suffering. And again, just recognizing the signs, making sure that there are limits to this, making sure you're doing checks on ages and things like that. But I think creating the word I'm trying to say is Mm. multifunctional spaces where you don't feel pressured. Like maybe you're not having all events at nighttime. Maybe you're having some daytime things to really address different things.
Yeah, I like the idea of doing stuff in the day too, because some people go to bed early and I don't have any idea. They just go to bed early. They might have other reasons. But I have colleagues who go to bed at 9 p.m. So anything later than 9 p.m. is not happening.
Yeah, I
So
think
nice
too,
to do.
like, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think that's just a nice idea in general, and it serves multiple purposes to just do something during the day.
Yeah, and then like, especially being in a virtual world that we're in, yeah, I think that's one of the positives that did come out of COVID. We got more comfortable. Like even this, right? Like this is something I get to be all the way in Mississippi. I'm not sure where you are. Like we get to share with people all across the country. And so I think being creative about how we're sharing spaces, being creative about even just times. Like I remember not remember like it was a long time ago, but when I was in my 9 to 5s, it was hard. I have two kids. So sometimes having things at 5 is not ideal because I have to go pick them up. Then I got to get them taken care of with the daycare. And then I got to drive back maybe to where my work is. So having something, being conscious of not just the substance, but also like people's lives. Like some people are not night owls, right? I am a night owl. But like you said, some people want to do stuff in the morning time. Can you have things at noon? And can you have different, like not all of us are motivated by food or drinks, right? Can you have cards? Can you have, other activities that we can engage in that's, but you only know that by engaging with the audience and really finding out what they're needing.
Yeah, and if anyone else has any other questions, that gave me a lot of the stuff. I think some of it is knowing your communities. Do you have tips about how to do that? So, like, any of this stuff is really knowing people in your community and having a good enough or great trust with them.
Mhm. I'm looking up the University of Minnesota. I'm gonna save this for later. Oh, it's good to hear about this. Um, ooh, I like this. But see, this is in chemistry. It's also my point that we don't have this in physics and astronomy.
Yeah.
Um, ask your question, sorry, one more time.
How do we develop community? I think that's one of the challenges with a lot of the things we are doing in general is developing community and trust with one another, because I think that's really hard. So if I didn't feel personally comfortable approaching somebody about, hey, it looks like they might be having some challenges, but I would want to go approach somebody else, I would need to have a trust with somebody else things like that, or if I wanted to advocate for this kind of program, which I will be actually after this, but how do we develop trust in community so that we can actually do some of the good things we're trying to do and get to know people and whatnot? Because I think that's a broader topic, and that seems like it's really relevant to this work.
Mm. I know this is going to sound so basic in my response. Part of it is being trusted, being a trusted individual. That's something we learn about in this training. Um, if you don't, if I mentioned to you that I'm a mental health first aider, but then you know that I told someone that you had anxiety, like that's not trusted, right? Like you're not going to want to come back to me in any form, shape, or way. So I think first of all, it's being trusted, and the other, this is also maybe a little controversial for people. I think it's just doing it, just creating the spaces and allowing people to show up. So every third Wednesday of every month, I have been thinking about this and sitting on this for a very long time. And I'm like, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to open up a space for us just to come and be. Sometimes it's going to have a topic, sometimes it's not going to have a topic, but I hear so much. And we are suffering, we are in pain, we just need an outlet. Like that is a recurring thing with a lot of people that I'm meeting on a regular basis. And so I'm going to create that space. And so part of it, I think, is being the trusted space. And the other is just creating the space and allowing people to show up. I'm dropping to you the flyer if anyone's interested in bringing mental health to higher ed. If you want to share that with other people, I was speaking at AAS and I was giving a workshop around like identity and belonging, and one of the students said like, I wish you had this on a plenary, like I wish this was bigger. And again, I think it goes back to the question you asked me earlier about like how do you change this in systems. It really goes back again to culture, right? If an organization is not trusted when I'm going to in someone about my mental health, and it just like blows up in my face, like then that organization is no longer trustworthy, right? So I think it's part of it is putting structure. And again, I know I'm being very redundant in saying this, but I think having supports as far as mental health, like embedding. Actually, you know what? The question about mental health in examples. Actually, there is an example that I know of at Minnesota, not Minnesota, Michigan State. They do have in their physics department embedded a counselor dedicated to their students. That's the only other place that I know that they're having that. And so I think just creating spaces like that, again, bringing in the experts, right? Bringing in the outside people that really know about this, that can help create those trusted spaces. And I think it's just speaking up more. I think, I know it's uncomfortable, it is uncomfortable standing up and saying like, listen, we need to have this or we need to do this. But I think the more that we can create spaces like this, right, the more people can, not just me but others, can know about like it's okay to talk about mental health. It's okay how to frame that in your STEM journey. Like what do you do? Like, so I was thinking about this before the talk came today, and I was thinking about how to explain to someone when you're having anxiety and then you're also dealing with like microaggressions, for example, then you're thinking, because something that can happen with anxiety, at least for me specifically, it's how it shows up, is that thing keeps playing over and over and over in my head. My advisor said something, I'm playing that over and over and over and over and over, and it's endless. It's in my sleep, it's disturbing my sleep. I'm trying to work out, it's disturbing that. Like I can't even be present because I'm thinking about this negative thing that my advisor said to me. And so these factors, again, like I think we just have to do. I know that sounds like so maybe easier said than done, but we just got to talk about it more. We got to say that we need this more. Like even now with what's happening, not to get all political, but like there are organizations like AAS and others that are saying, tell me your story. Tell me how this is impacting you. I think we need more people saying, I need mental health services. Does that answer your question? That was kind of a long way of answering your question.
Yeah, it does. I think that just really being public about things as, appropriately as people see fit, just having the conversation and trying it out. And you don't always have to go from zero to being on a plenary stage. You can have little interpersonal conversations, and that can launch a lot of lovely things. We have two comments, which is somebody said that if you're not like unfortunately that sometimes faculty who have not done their jobs well due to depression were given an improvement plan, which
Mm.
sounds kind of punitive or actually is punitive.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think those are the kinds of things that maybe people should consider is like, why are people not doing well in their jobs? Is it sometimes people just don't do well for whatever reason? Sometimes they have other stuff going on.
I think that goes back to, awareness, right? If someone was trained on that to say, I've been trained, I recognize depression, like that's actually what's happening, right? So someone to advocate for that individual to say, like, yes, John Doe is doing less, but what's happening? That goes back to that care piece. I know I sound like like so repetitive, but I mean this with all my being. We got to get out of our heads into our hearts. We sometimes know what's happening, but we could be so, you got to do X, Y, and Z. I don't like, I literally had an advisor like during the midst of the pandemic, like I wasn't performing as he needed to do, but he didn't understand like I was shut in with two kids, kindergarten and a second grader, doing things online, still expected to be like and I couldn't, and he didn't care. He had no cares about what I had going on as a single mom in my home. And unfortunately, that's a lot of how it is in our field. And so it goes back to having knowledge and like HR is not always your friend. HR probably is more likely not your friend than it is your friend, but they are places of resources. And so when that is failing, that's thank you for someone contributing that. I just want to uplift that. Like that is a real thing that is happening and it's shameful. This is why this training needs to happen. All right, this here.
And the last one is a comment that somebody says, I really appreciate the Auntie Jess in the story keeper framings and celebrating the trust that you're able to develop with your mentees. And then they also point out that our that there's some embedding of activities and STEM programs for the graduate students of the University of Maryland, looking at some stuff regarding mental health and things like that, which is it's good stuff. So it sounds like there's slowly but surely happening stuff happening. So which is good.
Yeah, that is really good. I'm definitely gonna try to save that to look at later. Thank you for sharing that.
Thanks. And we don't have any other questions, so I think and we're almost at top of the hour. So do you have anything else you want to share to close this out that would be helpful for people to think about?
I again want to challenge you to become trained as a mental health first aider. Um, I want you also to know if you are struggling today with mental health challenges, if you are struggling today with substance use challenges, there is hope. You do not have to suffer in this alone. Again, 988. I don't know if there's a way for me to share with you my email that people can email me. I did have a slide up, but I could just type it in there to also provide for people. Please don't suffer in silence is ultimately what I would say. And let's be this change that we want to see within our field and just letting people know that this is needed in our STEM spaces. This is needed in our STEM spaces. And I think that's where the change is going to begin. So thank you for this opportunity.
Great, and thank you so much for your time. And I will be sending out some of these resources once the recording's uploaded to YouTube. And I will
So
stop the recording.